Welcome to Uncovered. It's Wednesday. I'm Anthony, he's Ron, and together we're about to uncover the MAGA propaganda that is not covered by the mainstream and corporate media. Ron, it seems that Donald Trump has secured a ceasefire. He's certainly taken the credit for it, whether it was him or not. Obviously, there is huge celebration going on in the Middle East and Israel, and certainly for the Palestinians as well. As many of them are returning to their homes in Gaza, there's not much of a home to find. I mean, the whole thing has been completely obliterated. So I'm slightly worried we're going to have a whole new humanitarian crisis on our hands. But what's your take on this? Because, you know, the way Trump has kind of gone about these announcements and doubling down on celebrating himself, it's kind of embarrassing from a world stage perspective.
Yeah, and hopefully, by the way, this is my last show without one of my front teeth. I have my dentist appointment tomorrow for my root canal, so very much looking forward to that. Yeah, my take on this is very different than sort of what I've been reading in mainstream media. Actually, my take is somewhat similar to Steve Bannon's, who I listened to today a little bit, and my take was already fully formed before I listened to Bannon, but I was surprised at trolling around that he had a similar take than me, although that does happen on occasion. He does kind of swim against the current from time to time, as do I, although we don't agree on much. But you know, I think that after the initial euphoria, you know, of getting the hostages back, which was, of course, a big deal and a great thing that the Israelis celebrated, I think the reality is setting in of what this all means for both sides, and it does not mean, I think, very clearly what Trump has championed this as, or trumpeted this as peace in our time. You know, there's going to be peace, love, and harmony in the Middle East. Now he's solved all these problems and it's over and everybody's going to live happily ever after, because as all things Trump, the devil's in the details. You know, the initial announcement is always filled with hype and hope and promises. And then, you know, in this ensuing days, as with everything with him, you dig into the details and you find out there aren't many details. There are more problems and more questions than answers. And that's what we're seeing here. I think that I read two really good stories that just came out. One was in Time, and the other was in the Times, the UK Times, and which I guess used to be called the Times of London, right? Is that what it used to be?
Well, certainly before my time, we would just call it we would. I was going to say, but maybe in 1880, but we would just call it the Times.
Yeah, my mind is
that's okay.
But yeah, you know, they both had really excellent stories, which basically, you know, were like, Netanyahu is not really happy with this deal. This was forced upon him by Trump, who continued to threaten him down the stretch because Trump wanted his moment. And I think this deal is not something that Netanyahu wanted. Part of Trump's 20-point plan calls for a two-state solution, you know, which Netanyahu adamantly opposes, as does a lot of people in Israel. And so Trump was asked about that, sort of, well, what's going on with that? You know, is we going to have a Palestinian state here in Gaza that's going to be recognized by the United States? Because he's always been against that, but that's in his plan. And he said, oh, we'll see about that. You know, again, it's like, well, that's kind of a big deal. You know, we'll see. And, you know, every time he was asked a specific question, you know, how is the government going to be formed? Is Hamas going to be back in charge? Are they going to be allowed to rearm? What about opposition groups? How long is Israel going to occupy it? He has no answers. He has no specifics. And these are all major questions that need to be answered. I think what we're going to see unfold here in the next few weeks is Netanyahu is going to be removed from power. I think he's going to be toppled out of office. And then, you know, whoever comes in after that is going to be left to pick up the pieces. You know, the other thing that's striking is, and I reposted this video from August, is many others, experts in the region, are saying this deal is the same deal that Biden proposed back in August that was immediately rejected by Netanyahu. Hamas agreed to it, but it was rejected immediately by Netanyahu. And the reporting at the time was Donald Trump candidate Donald Trump ordered him not to agree to the deal because he was concerned that it was going to give a big boost to Kamala Harris less than 2 months before the election. Netanyahu flew to Mar-a-Lago, met with Trump at the time 3 weeks before that. They had a private meeting. They didn't discuss they didn't disclose what was discussed. And then Netanyahu rejects Biden's peace deal because Trump promised him he would get him a much better deal if he won the election. Turns out the deal is pretty much the exact same deal.
Let's look at that video from before the election. I remember reporting on it with you at the time, where it was suggested that Trump was back dealing with Netanyahu. Let's take a look.
Yeah. We know that Secretary of State Blinken is over there right now working with Netanyahu. The reporting is that former President Trump is on the phone with the Prime Minister of Israel, urging him not to cut a deal right now because it's believed that would help the Harris campaign.
And at the time, it just seemed... do you remember, actually, there was a lot of dealing going on from Mar-a-Lago. It was as if Trump was like a shadow presidency. That's how he saw himself. And he would do anything he could to prevent Harris from winning the election.
And we know Netanyahu was totally on board. Look, let's face it. Netanyahu has burned all of his bridges with the Democratic Party throughout this process by tampering in our election. And he did tamper in our election. And Israeli PMs have been very careful over many decades not to take sides in U.S. elections because they need both parties. They need constant support, militarily, economic, and otherwise, from their greatest ally, the United States, which means that they can't piss off one side or the other. And Israel has always been very careful not to do that. They're careful not to do that by making sure that they back both sides and praise both sides all the time and never criticize either side. But Netanyahu stepped out of that, I think, because he was facing a criminal trial, facing impeachment, facing political exile, and he just decided for his own personal survival, he needed to go all in with Trump. And I think it's very telling that at that press conference yesterday, 2 days ago in Israel, Trump urged, when he addressed their parliament, he urged them he urged the president to pardon Netanyahu because Netanyahu's criminal prosecution is going to go forward as soon as he loses the next election, which he's going to do. But you know, the reason why they haven't had an election is because the war has been ongoing. So now that's the peace deal's done, Netanyahu has no excuse anymore to delay his criminal trial. So you got Netanyahu helping out Trump in the election here, and now you got Trump over there in Israel lobbying for a Netanyahu pardon. The whole thing stinks.
Stinks, yeah. I'll play the clip that you're describing. The way that Trump conducts himself, you know, I always say that Trump and Netanyahu are cut from the same cloth, but it really is like all the criminals sticking together. Let's take a look.
The good men right here. These two men are good men right here. Hey, I have an idea. Mr. President, why don't you give him a pardon? Give him a pardon. Come on.
So, I mean, it introduces a level of lawlessness and corruption into the highest levels of government, sanctioned by the United States. I mean, that's not a very good reference, is it?
How incredibly inappropriate that is.
Yeah.
And the people applauding are Netanyahu's party. The opposition parties were not applauding there. And I mean, you have a president of you have Netanyahu while Trump was under criminal prosecution denouncing that on behalf of Trump. And now you have Trump, trying to get Netanyahu a pardon. And think about the implications of that, because as we just said, Israel completely depends on the United States. Without the United States, they would be cooked. So you have the president of the United States telling their legislature, telling their president in front of their legislature, you better pardon my friend. Because as we know, Trump could pull aid from them if they don't do what he wants, as he's threatened other people. So yeah, this whole thing was just a gross spectacle. And by the way, both sides within 24 hours of what we just watched are accusing each other of violating the agreement already.
Yeah.
The Israelis fired on Palestinians who they claimed were violating some of the terms of the agreements by blocking some roads and things like that. And then the Israelis are accusing Hamas of violating the agreement by not immediately turning over the dead bodies. They only returned 4. So look, this thing is going to be a mess. By the way, my take when I said is similar to Steve Bannon, this is what Bannon said, and I agree with this. What Bannon said is this, that the Israelis got screwed here, and they don't even know it yet because they don't understand what deals Trump has made with the Arab states to make this happen.
I was going to say,
and
this is the crux of this, isn't it? Because remember that the Palestinians were not involved in the negotiation. The negotiation happened with the Qataris, with Erdogan's people in Turkey, and representatives from Hamas who are funded by Qatar.
Absolutely right. Absolutely right. And we know that the Hamas representatives got a closed door meeting with Witkoff when this thing was looking very dicey, like it might not happen. And they emerged from that meeting agreeing to the deal. So my question is this, because this gave me big time Trump Taliban vibes, the Afghanistan deal, where he gave away the farm to the Taliban, freed all their hostages right before the withdrawal, and basically set up the withdrawal for failure through his terrible deal with the Taliban. My question is, what did Witkoff promise the leaders of Hamas to get them to suddenly agree to this deal? We don't know. The devil's in the details there. So, but the Arab states seem to be very happy with whatever they have been promised. So you have a deal where Trump is getting, a $5 billion golf resort in Qatar. UAE put $2 billion into his crypto company. They're building golf resorts, Trump resorts in Saudi Arabia, Oman. They want to develop Gaza, and Kushner's in there wanting to build hotels. I have a feeling that lots of promises were made to them by the Trump administration in a very transactional way where he's getting personally enriched. And when the Israelis ultimately find out the details of that, they are not going to be happy.
I initially thought that the timing of all of this was set to coincide with the announcement of the Nobel Peace Prize, and that Trump had kind of hurried it on. And he said, just get it done. It doesn't matter if it's only 0.1 of 20 points, because they're deciding the Nobel Prize, and this is a surefire winner. I'll be up there with the likes of Obama and Kissinger, and unfortunately, the timing didn't quite work out, and Trump then said she accepted it on my behalf, which was just genius. But when that kind of came and went, I realized that you have to ask what's in this for Trump, because there's no way he would do this out of the goodness of his heart. There's no way he would do this just because he wants to bring peace to the people of Gaza. There's always got to be some kind of financial remuneration and some kind of business deal attached to it, because all of the wars, the 7 wars supposedly that he has ended, they're all basically financial incentives that benefit him.
And whatever they are, we will find them out, as we always do, a couple months later. They'll dribble out when they start breaking ground on a Trump tower in Riyadh or wherever. There's already one there, another one. Or in Gaza when Kushner tries to go in there and start building condos. So my question is this: let's say there's so many issues and problems with this. We could spend the whole show on it, but we won't. But let's say the U.S. goes in there and Kushner starts building stuff and Hamas bombs, the Kushner hotel. Like, are we going to send troops in? Are we going to guard, American interests in Gaza? You think Hamas is going to allow that? I mean, maybe they would if their leaders are bribed, because I also think that's part of it. I think that the leaders of Hamas, that's the other thing we don't know, just like with the Taliban, are they getting personally enriched? Were they promised many millions of dollars to go into their pockets personally to agree to this deal? Something that Trump would not want made public, that we're paying Hamas leaders. I think what's going to happen is ultimately the opposition party that takes control of Israel is going to find out, as they always do, all the details of this deal and what's been promised. They're going to be very upset. And this is going to cause a lot of friction here in the United States within the Republican Party, because, the rank and file MAGA movement is very pro-Israel. I think more pro-Israel than Trump. See, I think what Trump has decided, that Netanyahu is more of a pain in the ass than he's worth.
Right.
More trouble than
But that's why he did the pardon thing, because he
And
probably
he has
said to
decided to
Netanyahu,
move on.
I'll get you pardoned if you swallow this in the short term.
Exactly
and it'll all
right.
work out for you.
And
Yeah.
I think he's prepared to wash his hands of Netanyahu and move on, because Israel does nothing for Trump. He doesn't get any money from them. He has no business deals with them. They don't benefit. All his dealings are with the Arab countries in the Middle East and Arab companies. That's where he has more economic ties to them than than any business he has in the United States or in Europe. His primary sources of income are now Arab states in the Middle East. He gets nothing from Israel. So I think that he is prepared to move off Israel and become an ally of the United States more closely with the Arab states than Israel, which is going to absolutely cause major epic problems inside the Republican Party, because especially in Congress, those Republicans in Congress are all in on Israel. And if they see Trump moving away from Israel towards the Arab states, as it appears he's doing, it's going to be a problem.
He even said out loud, as he welcomed the delegate from the United Arab Emirates onto the stage, who put $2 billion into Trump's cryptocurrency, he said they got a lot of cash, unlimited cash. I mean, talk about saying the quiet parts out loud. Let's take a look. A lot of cash,
There were
unlimited
several
cash.
funny parts about that. Yeah, they did invest when he first started up his crypto company the day before he took office, January 19th.
That's right.
They were the single largest investors. They put in $2 billion. So a couple funny things about that. First of all, he thought that was like the emir of UAE. That wasn't. It was just some delegate that they
Just
sent.
random delegate.
He
Yeah.
kept saying, "Where's the emir? Where's the emir?" And the emir wasn't even there. He wasn't even there. That was in Egypt. He sent that guy. So Trump kept thinking that's the emir who gave him the $2 billion. So that's one funny part. The other funny part is, like, Trump tried to do his usual like power handshake, as he was doing with all of them, where he like tries to yank your arm off and pull people towards him to show that how strong and powerful he is. But that guy was clearly ready for it, because right before that, Trump did it to Macron. His handshake with Macron was like watching a tug of war session. It was 28 seconds long. That's a long handshake. So this guy goes up there, and you can see he's ready for it, because he's like he was yanking back. Like, I'm not going to let him humiliate me. I mean, the Trump handshake thing is so insane and bizarre, and you can see all these like world leaders getting ready for it. They like have to gear up for a wrestling match whenever they shake his hand, because he feels this need to like prove that he's the dominant person in the room with his handshake, which is so ridiculous.
He was asked on Air Force One if he'd changed his position on Qatar, and because in 2017 he said they were terrorists. Let's take a look at his response.
They were very brave, and their leader, the emir, was very, very brave. And Qatar should start getting some credit. And you have to understand, they lived in the middle of everything. So they can't just be like, you couldn't do it, I can. Nobody could do it. Say what?
Did they change their behavior from 2017 when you accused them of funding terrorism?
I don't know. In 2017, I didn't really know them very well. 2017, that was at the very beginning of my term. As I got to know them, I got to understand them, and I got to realize that they are right in the middle of everything. Other countries are there, but they're an hour and an hour and a half away. A big difference.
Yeah, their geography.
I mean, it's a shame that we don't have any real reporters either, because, there's a million comebacks to this stuff. And people are just silenced by his stupidity, almost.
He knows nothing about Qatar. Like, what he knows when he says, I got to know them better since then. And keep in mind, Qatar is the major financial backer of Hamas. Okay, so it has to very much unnerve Israelis to hear these kinds of comments from Trump. What he learned when he says, I learned more about them, what he learned is a $5.5 billion Trump golf resort in Qatar. That's what he learned. He learned that they have a really nice big private jet that they call the Palace in the Sky that they gave to him to keep after he leaves the White House. That's what he has learned about Qatar that has caused him to stop calling them a state sponsor of terrorism and to call him now his friends.
I mean, the fact that they were the go-between for Hamas throughout these negotiations initially, and then there were representatives directly from Hamas brought to the table. I mean, what happened to we do not negotiate with terrorists? Because, the way this looks, there's still nothing really for the Palestinians in terms of how Gaza is going to look going forward. And I mentioned earlier, people are coming back to rubble, but there is no schedule, there's no plan. There's no, this was a criticism of the Americans in Afghanistan and Iraq. There was no plan for reconstruction. It was all about just getting in there and bombing the shit out of it and, celebrating being the winner. Meanwhile, in hindsight now, America has basically admitted to being the loser in those wars because, to all intents and purposes, the Taliban are back and running things. It's going to be the same here in Gaza, isn't it?
I totally agree. I think it's the only difference is that, we don't have U.S. troops in there, but I can definitely see us getting sucked into a quagmire, similar. I think it's more similar to Vietnam than Afghanistan. The beginning, like the 1963 Kennedy time in Vietnam, where we just where we kept saying, we're not going to send troops in. So we sent in advisors, we call them, a couple hundred advisors. Then we had to send in some people to protect the advisors. Then we had to send in some more people and construction people. And before you just slowly get sucked into this quagmire, before you then need to send in after the Gulf of Tonkin combat troops, but it didn't start out that way. It didn't start out with an invasion. I can see us getting sucked into a quagmire here for what? To establish a Palestinian state, a U.S. sponsored Palestinian state. That's what we're going to do. I don't know what the end game is here. That's why they asked Trump, is your goal here to establish a Palestinian state with U.S. recognition and backing? Because it says that in his plan. In his it says it right in there.
Well, Trump hasn't read the plan, obviously. Trump only cares about the announcement. Yeah,
right. Exactly.
Yeah. For him,
like
dragging everyone to
over at this point. Like, he just the hostage thing. He got all the hype from that, but it's like, do we really believe that the hostages were Hamas's major bargaining chip and leverage chip. You really think they gave those up for what? To keep Israel from invade. Israel can reignite the war at any time. I mean, there's a lot that has been talked about and agreed to and handshake deal behind the scenes that's going to come out in the next couple months, and it's not going to make this deal look as good as it looked the first 24 hours.
But Trump only cares about the first 24 hours because he is a propagandist. And so, I mean, even inviting everybody to Egypt and doing this very weird, it was like a kind of sports day presentation, you know, where you go watch your kids getting their swimming award for swimming 50 feet. Everybody was there. I mean, even the British Prime Minister was standing right behind him, and Trump's like, you know, where's the UK? And Keir Starmer goes, I'm right behind you, as usual. And
that
it
was kind of a humiliating moment for
humiliating
Starmer.
And embarrassing. The whole thing was embarrassing. Trump just doing stand-up comedy, basically, like, oh, Emmanuel Macron. Well, I'm surprised you're this. I'm surprised you're that. It was like the worst Netflix special I'd ever seen.
And you got, you know, the Pakistani prime minister standing up there ranting and raving how Trump should get the Nobel Prize.
That's right.
And you got Maloney standing behind there just rolling her eyes and wincing. I mean, like, I thought this is supposed to be about, like, this is a serious conflict that has gone on for decades. Right. And all of a sudden it's about whether Trump's going to get a prize. That's what this is about now. That's what it's turned into. I mean, come on. So, and by the way, the Nobel Peace Prize is a year from now when war could be raging in this region by then. So he better not bank on getting the prize from this.
The Nobel Committee already confirmed that they don't give the prize to people who kind of instigate violence, and you know they made that very clear. Trump is never going to get a Nobel Prize, and if he hasn't worked that out by now, I mean, he's a little bit behind the times. You know, that the people who dish those out, they have no respect for him, and they know the games that he's playing.
He blew up his 7th boat in the Caribbean yesterday and killed 6 more
That's
people.
right.
So that's not helping his cause either.
No. So talking of Qatar, there's this announcement about a military base in the US. Your friend Laura Loomer posted about it, didn't she? She said, WTF is America first about allowing Qatar to have a military base on US soil. This is an abomination. So much for Make America Safe Again by letting funders of Hamas and the Muslim Brotherhood have a military base on US soil. Un-effing believable, just unbelievable. So she posts that, and then funny thing was that we saw this kind of press conference with Pete Hegseth sitting with the Qatari Emiri signing this deal. And then the next thing you know, the vice president's asked about it in a news interview, and he just goes, well, that's a fake story. I mean, how can it be a fake story when you've actually got the guy who's running the Pentagon right now, the Department of War or whatever the hell they want to call it, actually very clearly kind of doing a press event? It's almost like these departments don't bother talking to each other. Let's have a quick look.
No one other than President Trump could have achieved the peace that we believe will be a lasting peace in Gaza. And Qatar played a substantial role from the beginning, working with our folks to ensure that came about. So I want to thank you for that historic peace. We look forward to joining the president as that gets, it's already been delivered, but as that's formally signed as well. And I'm also proud that today we're signing a letter of acceptance to build a Qatari Emiri Air Force facility at the Mountain Home Air Base in Idaho. The location will be host a contingent of Qatari F-15s and pilots to enhance our combined training, increase lethality, interoperability. It's just another example of our partnership. And I hope you know, Your Excellency, that you can count on us.
Well, that's just shocking.
Hell.
Never thought I'd see the day. Any president, much less an administration that touts itself as America first, having an Arab state that sponsors Hamas, flying F-15s over the United States and having their own air facility. Now,
But this is part of the peace deal, surely. This was
exactly
must
right.
be.
We are.
Must be.
Remember how I said we're going to see over the next couple of months all the little things that have been promised and agreed to make this happen,
right?
So Trump can get his Nobel Prize. This is one of those pieces, right? I mean, the prestige that the first Arab state that has a air base in the U.S. Now they tried to walk it back because Hegseth is having a really bad week. I mean, the worst week he's had since Signal. You got this, then you got the entire U.S. press corps, including Fox and Newsmax, rallying against his new rules, which we can talk about later. But then you have this announcement in other words, if you're gonna, because Vance tried to minimize this and say, oh, we're just helping train their pilots. We do this with lots of countries. That's not what's going down here. If you're just gonna have like pilots from Qatar come to a U.S. base and train, that's one thing. Okay, yeah, we do that from time to time, not necessarily with a country like Qatar, but we do it with the Brits and the Germans. Look, when I was in the military, I went to British interrogator school where I learned how to interrogate prisoners from guys who were Falkland Islands war vets. Right?
Oh, so wow.
I went to a British interrogation school. So we do that. We share, resources with our allies, but we don't allow them. And what Vance is trying to say is, because a lot of people got carried away and said we're giving them their own air base. No, we're giving them we're allowing them to construct their own air facility, buildings, runways, everything else, radar, all that kind of stuff, with their own jets, not our jets, their own jets, on a U.S. air base in Idaho. And they're going to be flying their jets over the continental United States. Remember when MAGA went apeshit because a Chinese balloon floated over the U.S.?
Right.
Well, Qatar is going to be flying F-15s over the United States. I mean, this is completely outrageous. And the fact that this isn't being made a bigger deal of, and again, our media just accepted, oh, well, this just happened. This is fairly routine. It's not routine. This is outrageous that this is happening. And it's
why did Vance deny it, though? Why did Vance deny it when he was asked?
Well, because MAGA went crazy. They had a full-blown rebellion on their hands where MAGA's like, are you serious? The Qataris are going to have an air base in the United States? What the hell are you guys talking about? They were shocked. They were up in arms. They were freaking out. And so Vance had to run out on all the Sunday shows. He did like 4 the next day right in a row. I never seen him do that before. He did every Sunday show. He did ABC, CBS, NBC, Fox. He did them all, where he was trying to put this fire out. And so that's why he tried to walk it back and tried to claim this is routine, blah, blah, blah. It's not routine. And again, did anybody pin him down? No, there was no pin down. I mean, thankfully, we got a little pin down in the Stephanopoulos interview for once on the Tom Homan bribe stuff, but that was pretty much it. He didn't get much pushback on the Qatari airbase. But trust me, this is the tip of the iceberg. There's much more that Qatar has been promised besides this.
I wrote a Substack the other day about how so much of this was initially directed at Trump trying to secure that Nobel Prize. And I wrote a line that said, Trump doesn't care for Arabs, right, referencing the Palestinian people, because they're poor. But he loves a rich Arab. And, this is what people need to understand, is that the wealth, he just sees dollar signs in his eyes. He can't believe it, that there's now a potential unlimited money supply. And he's not really thinking about the US or even his presidency. He's thinking about enriching his family and himself and his legacy. And this is the most blatant and transparent corruption that American politics has ever seen. And Republicans are still silent.
That's why, since Trump won the election last November, Jared, Ivanka, Eric and Don Jr. have pretty much moved into the Middle East. I mean, they're over there all the time, constantly making deals over there. I try to document them and highlight them and talk about them and post them on social media, but I mean, they go largely ignored. There's some New York Times occasionally does some stories, and WAPO and a few others, AP, but for the most part, like, they get no publicity on American television at all these deals. And you're right. This is the motivating factor. Trump wants the adulation. He wants the Nobel Peace Prize. He craves that very much. So we can't minimize that and put it to the side. But that is just a small part of it.
It's all vanity
here. Yeah.
We have to take a quick break, but I want to come back and you reference this kind of media blackout on Hegseth's requirement to about reporting on Pentagon matters. We'll talk about that. I also want to talk about the No Kings protest and how MAGA has reacted to what is planned for the weekend. All that and much more next on Uncovered. Have you ever fallen in love with something online only to see the price and then think, I just can't afford it? Well, that's where dupe.com comes in. It's a genius tool that helps you find high-quality, budget-friendly versions of the expensive items you've been eyeing. It's really easy to use. Just type dupe.com / in front of any product URL, and it shows you lookalikes that won't drain your savings account. And these aren't shady knockoffs. Most of the time, they're made in exactly the same factories, just sold under a different name, with a way scarier price tag. So that $6,000 couch that influencers are always lounging on, Dupe will probably find it for $1,200. Same vibe, same plushness, but you don't have to sell a kidney to afford it. It's totally free, dangerously addictive, and blowing up on TikTok for good reason. So, if you've got expensive taste but not the budget to go with it, dupe.com is your new best friend. Go ahead and make your dream home happen without maxing out on your credit card. Dupe.com is so easy to use. Just type dupe.com / before any product URL in your browser, and boom, it instantly finds you less expensive alternatives. They even have an app and a browser extension you can download. No account required, no sign-up required. It's completely free to use, so stop wasting money on brand names and start saving with dupe.com today. Do you ever scroll the headlines and feel like every push alert just raised your blood pressure? Yeah, same. That's where IndaCloud comes in. IndaCloud is a fully legal online dispensary. No cards, no dispensary runs, no mystery gummies from a friend's cousin. They've already delivered over 10 million gummies, mountains of flour, and enough pre-rolls to get through another election season. Every product is tested in DEA-certified labs and ships straight to your door discreetly. Looking for better sleep? They've got a gummy for that. Need to take the edge off without a hangover? They have something for that too. And if flour's your thing, IndaCloud does exclusive deals year-round. No gimmicks, no fine print. It's federally legal THC made simple. That's why more than 50,000 customers already trust IndaCloud to keep their buzz hassle-free. If you're 21 or older, head to indacloud.co and use code UNCOVERED for 30% off your first order plus free shipping. That's indacloud.co, code UNCOVERED for 30% off, free shipping, and less stress delivered to your door. Support the show by filling out their quick survey when you ordered, and thank IndaCloud for making the news cycle just a little easier to handle. Don't forget, please enjoy responsibly. Welcome back, and don't forget you can find links to our sponsors in the description below. Ron, I just wanted to show, before we talk about this kind of Pentagon issue, I wanted to show that photo of the Time magazine image of Donald Trump. He got his Time cover. You know, he was faking Time covers before he became famous enough. So now he's finally on the front page. His triumph, the leader Israel needed, is the headline, How Gaza Heals. But the funniest part of this was Trump's response to it. where he wrote, Time magazine wrote a relatively good story about me, but the picture may be the worst of all time. They disappeared my hair and then had something floating on top of my head that looked like a floating crown, but an extremely small one. Really weird. I never like taking pictures from underneath angles, but this is a super bad picture and deserves to be called out. What are they doing and why, he says on Truth Social. I mean, they are humiliating him on purpose here, aren't they? I mean, you described it as a neck vagina is what they're exposing, where his chin waddle gets pulled together by a tight white shirt and creates a crease that he is not very fond of. But this whole thing is, it's not a great picture, but that's got to be intentional, hasn't it?
Yes, of course, I was bitten by the Democratic word police, which is ever vigilant, always looking to quarrel with a choice of a word. And they got, so I heard somebody say, I should not refer to this. You should not refer to this as a, how many social media replies have I received from Democrats that began with, you should not call it this, you should call it that. So they were upset that I called it a neck vagina because they said vaginas are useful and his neck is skin fat and all of that is not. So I understand that critique, but it does wear me out when every post I make somebody quarrels with a word choice. But that's an aside. Yeah, that's what he's upset about. You know, he has this weird thing where he has all this loose stuff happening with his neck and he tucks it in, he folds it, sort of like he does with his hair weave, where he does like the triple weave with his hair transplant.
From the back and from the side, yeah.
And so, you know, that hair is designed to be his, you know, triple weave of his quadruple hair transplant is supposed to be viewed from a certain angle, not from below.
Yes,
when you can see all the issues. And that's why he doesn't like going out in the wind either, the same reason. It kind of messes with the weave. But he has got that neck thing where he folds it into his collar like that and pinches it together, which, you know, when you're like facing him head on, you can't see it all that well most of the time. But from that angle, obviously, it's very visible. And
yeah, well, he can't see it. I'm sure all of his mirrors are quite high up, so he's always kind of looking up, you know, and hiding his own chins for himself. But, I mean, he really is one of the most visually disgusting creatures on the planet, and he doesn't make life easy for himself by painting himself orange and squeezing his neck into this whatever that thing is. I don't know. It looks alien to me. But anyway, that was so what's your view on whether or not Time were doing that on purpose? I mean, are you with me that was the editorial department saying, okay, you know, with one hand we'll congratulate him on his ceasefire agreement, but on the other hand we're going to make him look terrible?
Yeah, I mean, it certainly was a choice. You don't see like posed photos for a cover from Trump looking like that. I mean, and we know how seriously he takes this. I mean, his mugshot, remember that? You know, the Georgia mugshot. We got all
of course.
News reports about how he practiced for hours in front of the mirror for that pose. It was so important to him. And, you know, he puts that photo everywhere now, you know, and so, so it how he, you know, shows himself, how he's presented to the public is he obsesses over it like nobody else, and he has his entire life. And so, yeah, this is a big deal when somebody does this to him. You know, he clearly, I mean, that was his first post of Tuesday morning. He woke up and posted that. That was his first post of the day. So obviously that was something that bothered him quite a bit.
Let's talk about this story about the Defense Department avoiding the press and now putting this kind of requirement that the press are not allowed to kind of announce anything that was previously classified. Just tell us the story behind this before I kind of show these examples.
I think this is a really, really important moment in this whole battle, you know, and it's going to be a 4-year battle, hopefully only 4 years against this authoritarian regime. And I'm calling it a regime now all the time, because that's what it is. It's not an administration, it's a regime. And so, you know, Hegseth put out, he initially put out all these rules, when he first took office. They were trying to restrict, you can't go in this part of the Pentagon, reporters, you can't go in that part and all that. And that wasn't enough for him. We know he's also given polygraph exams, and he's even fired some of his aides who longtime friends he's fired, who he suspected of leaking to the press. So we know that he's obsessed with his press coverage, and he's obsessed with leakers and all of that. So he put out this whole big set of rules, 17 pages of rules on limiting reporters. But the most important part of it was that they had to get Pentagon approval for anything that they put out, which of course is something we did in World War II, but we haven't with military censors. But by the way, the reporting in World War II was terrible. The American reporting was all propaganda. It was all BS. I mean, a lot of it was true, but a lot of it was complete lies because everything was censored. And he kind of wants to go back to that era, of having the Pentagon having complete control over the reporting that comes out. And so the critical important moment here is that, when they've done this in the past, like on Air Force One, when they banned AP, and, when Leavitt was banning people from the press room and not calling on people, they didn't band together. There was sort of like, and that's what I kept yelling at them about, is like, you all have to boycott. You all have to walk out. What's the Ben Franklin quote? We either hang together. We either hang together or we hang separately, right? From the revolution. So, I mean, that's basically what's going on here. And so I think that the press learned their lesson on that they have to stick together. And so when he put this out, it was great to see. I think New York Times was the first, Washington Post was second, to come together and say, we will not sign this. And he set a deadline, 6 p.m. on Tuesday. So you had 2 or 3 big companies that came out and said, we will not sign this. But I think what really, really the big one was Newsmax. Of all people, a far-right network that completely over the top favors, they were like the 4th company that came out and said, we will not sign this. And so then you had all of these on the day before the deadline, which really, if you look at that list, put all the pressure on one media outlet, which was glaringly absent from this list, which is Fox, which is, the only network that Hegseth will go on, the only network he will do interviews with. And so he's got to have Fox on his side on this. And so the thing is, if Fox sided with OAN, which is the only network which is basically run by Matt Gaetz now, if Fox sided with them, then Hegseth could have some breathing room here to just continue doing what he's doing. I'll only give information to Fox. But here's what I think was happening here. I think Fox wanted to do this, wanted to go along with Hegseth, but they have one problem. Their Pentagon correspondent is Jennifer Griffin, who is their best reporter and their most straight shooter and their most honest reporter, and a veteran who's been with Fox for 25 years, since the beginning. And I think what happened was, and I tried to reach out to her to ask her if this was the case, because I do talk to her from time to time, is I think she threatened to resign. I mean, I think she threatened to go public and make a big deal out of this, because, we didn't hear anything out of Fox for the longest time. And I think she drew the line in the sand and said, we will not sign this. And so, because there's no way she would have gone along with this, knowing her as I do. So, and then at the last minute, Fox did come out and joined the other networks, and they joined CNN, ABC, CBS, NBC, all the major networks, and Fox issued a joint statement hours before the deadline saying none of us will go along with this. So the ball is now in Hegseth's court on what he's going to do.
Who's Dan Lamothe? Why don't I know this person?
He covers the Pentagon for, I think, CNN. I think he's the CNN Pentagon correspondent.
Yeah, I boycotted CNN about a year and a half ago. But he wrote, Pete Hegseth has not briefed Pentagon reporters in nearly 4 months, and Press Secretary Kingsley Wilson has not conducted a briefing in 2 months. The Defense Department has avoided questions from the press, all while U.S. troops are operating around the globe. The Pentagon has conducted legally questionable military strikes that have killed people in international waters, and the administration has deployed troops to American cities. So this was kind of off the back of this point, and it's almost as if, I mean, again, let me kind of ring the authoritarianism bell, because that's what this is. This is controlling the media, it is controlling the narrative, and it's Hegseth on behalf of the Pentagon and the Defense Department basically trying to have the kind of authoritarian upper hand with no pushback, with no questions asked. And when you're talking about shooting these boats, I mean, it's so blatantly a war crime. The International Criminal Court have a lot to say about this, which is partly why Trump has kind of signed an executive order to not to recognize the ICJ in this case.
So think about the week that this dipshit has. It started out with him talking about the Qatari air base, and which he never should have even mentioned. He never should have had that joint press conference. If they were going to do this, they should have just kind of done it quietly behind the scenes, and nobody would have probably known. But so he has that where he comes out and talks about a Qatari air base on U.S. soil, and then he has a huge rebellion from MAGA on that, which causes J.D. Vance to have to go on all the Sunday shows to put the fire out. Then he has Fox and Newsmax rebelling against his Pentagon policy, along with every other media company in the country that covers the Pentagon. So what a week. I mean, this guy, how long is Donald Trump going to stick with he's got a lot of bad cabinet members. This is his weakest link. This guy is a problem for Donald Trump. And so I don't know how much longer he can stick with this fool.
I did have a similar opinion, but now I'm of the opinion that Trump wants these fools, because really he would have to get rid of his whole cabinet, including RFK Jr. and anybody and everybody who is completely unqualified, inexperienced, and screwing everything up effectively, and yet he keeps them. And I don't know, I just feel like to him having people that are just a bit weird is all part of it. It really is like the Joker and his henchmen out of a Batman comic.
He fired that Sergio Gore guy who was butting heads with a lot of people, his personnel director. Who, remember we went through the Sergio Gore thing about where was he born? He claimed he was born in Malta, but everybody was saying, we said, well, that name Gore is not a real name. That's been abbreviated, and then it turned out that he was actually born in the Soviet Union. And he just fired him this week. So, and he made him, of course, Trump never actually fires anybody. He gives them a different job. So he made him ambassador to India, which, congratulations. We're in an all-out trade war with India with no end in sight. We're going to make you ambassador. Great job. And he put Dan Scavino, his former golf caddy, in charge of White House personnel.
But so that confirms my point that the more inexperienced they are, the more likely that they are to be promoted. So it's not just the news networks that are refusing to kind of play along with this regime, but now the airports are refusing to play along. This is with Kristi Noem's latest kind of scare tactics video, which has become political propaganda, which they play in airports, and I'll show you it, and then we can explain. But there are several airports that have refused to show this.
I'm Kristi Noem, the United States Secretary of Homeland Security. It is TSA's top priority to make sure that you have the most pleasant and efficient airport experience as possible while we keep you safe. However, Democrats in Congress refuse to fund the federal government, and because of this, many of our operations are impacted, and most of our TSA employees are working without pay. We will continue to do all that we can to avoid delays that will impact your travel. And our hope is that Democrats will soon recognize the importance of opening the government.
So obviously we are in the midst of a government shutdown into the second week. Blaming the Democrats in a kind of political video like this does not belong in airports, let alone because they put them on the radio as well. I mean, I heard her last video was playing out on iHeart stations, and so I was out shopping and I heard it being played in a store. And I was like, are you kidding me? Like this kind of aggressive tactic, if you cross our border, we will hunt you down and find you. She sounded like Liam Neeson. And so, I really feel like it's important for the airports, which should stay politically neutral, to step up. There's been a handful, right? But there needs to be more.
Yeah, I mean, we've all been in airports and heard these PSAs usually they're from the local mayor welcoming you to the town, or you might have something from, the TSA person or whatever about checking your bags or making sure you don't have certain weapons or whatever. We have never in the history of this country ever had a partisan political message, PSA, public service announcement, played in public spaces, airports, attacking the opposition party politically. That has never happened before because why? Because it's a violation of the law. It's a violation of the Hatch Act. But look, the Hatch Act is something like Donald Trump wipes his ass with. He doesn't care about that.
He's violated it tens of thousands of times.
Hatch Act. What do I care? I mean, who under the Hatch Act, who's supposed to enforce the Hatch Act, by the way? It's a misconception. Who enforces the Hatch Act? It's the president of the United States. He is supposed to enforce the Hatch Act among his people, and he's supposed to discipline his people when they violate it. So Donald Trump is in charge of enforcing the Hatch Act for the United States government, right?
Yeah.
So,
great.
I mean, I was the first one who posted that on social media, by the way. I got that as soon as it came out, and I said, look, if this is going to – people need to start calling these airports. They need to call the airport authorities. They're all private. The government does not control them. And we need to make sure that this does not happen because they do not have to play these things. And what has happened over the next couple of days since this thing came out and got some media attention, thank God, although it was a slow burn, when I put it out, people were pretty upset, but no media company really did a story on it for about 24 hours. Now I think we're up to like the LaGuardia, JFK, Phoenix, Chicago, Las Vegas, LAX, a lot of the major airports, Seattle, Portland in the United States have said that they will not play this anymore. But there's still plenty that will. And so everybody, I would encourage them, call your local airport authority or email them or whatever and say, please do not play this partisan political message. It has nothing to do with airport security.
I also want to take issue with something she said at the beginning. I don't know if you noticed. She said that TSA tries to make your airport experience as pleasant as possible. Now, I don't know if you've been through, right? I don't know if you've been through the airport recently, and this is something for people that haven't traveled internationally. I just want to make it absolutely clear. The way that TSA staff, whether they're paid or not paid, the way that they treat passengers is absolutely disgraceful and completely offensive, shouting at people as if they are criminals when all they're trying to do is shuffle along in line and, zigzag. And, you the moment you go into Europe or, just like civilized places or even Canada, you get people who work at the airport who are also part of the under the same umbrella, the equivalent of TSA. And they're like, hello, welcome to Canada. Come this way, use this machine. And I just don't understand this. It's always, under previous presidents too, it's always been this very aggressive, dictatorial approach to handling passengers. And it's horrible. People hate it.
Yeah, they remind me of like IRS or DMV employees where they got a little bit of power and it just like goes to their heads, and I always try to be very respectful because, look, I appreciate the airport security and I really want them to do their job and enforce the rules because I want to, survive and not have a terrorist attack, on the plane or anything else. So, but yeah, I mean, do they really need to do the job the way they are? No. But hey, Mike Lee has been trying to abolish the TSA for a long time. So maybe
I was about to say that they want to get rid of all the security stuff, because all this security, people forget that this security came in after 9/11, not before it, and
there was
came
no
in
TSA
after
before 9/11.
That's right, and the shoe bomber also, that he's the reason why people had to start taking their shoes off, and so they're trying to undo a lot of this stuff because. As far as I have a theory that the Trump regime is just trying to kind of kill people who travel commercial and poor people basically who don't travel private. So if people die in a terrorist attack, well, that's less people to worry about as far as he's concerned. It sounds macabre. Because it is. Okay, let's talk about the shutdown a little bit here, shall we? Because Mike Johnson is permanently on the defensive regarding this. And, look, the Republicans, they are very good at their messaging, and he has marketed this as the Democrat shutdown or as Schumer's shutdown, and it does roll off the tongue. But, I've read a few surveys recently that suggest that people do blame the Trump administration and the Republicans for this shutdown because ultimately they control all branches of government. So they have to take some responsibility for it. But what's your take on Speaker MAGA Mike Johnson's strategy in this?
I think you're right that their messaging is usually good, but it has not been good on this. They have rolled out multiple different messaging, and I think it's probably coming from Stephen Miller because it's so bad. I mean, I think Trump's instincts on this kind of stuff is pretty good. That's like one of the few things he's good at, are these little slogans and stuff, that catch on, but. I think he's kind of been out of the loop on this one, and I think Miller is running the show and Russ Vought, and they're just not very as good at crafting messaging. Neither is Mike Johnson, by the way. And I think Kevin McCarthy was good. I think Trump is good at messaging, but they're out of the loop here. Obviously, McCarthy's out of the picture. So the first thing they rolled out was like, this is to give free, trans surgeries, that didn't work very long. Then they went free healthcare for illegals, then that didn't really work. The public wasn't really buying that. That's what this was really all about. So that didn't work either. So now they've adopted this weird third message, which makes no sense to me whatsoever. Like, it boggles my mind who came up with this. But what they're saying is that Schumer is trying to drag this out to bolster attendance at the No Kings rally on October 18th, which was like, this No Kings rally was planned like 4 months ago. Like this has nothing to do with the shutdown. It's not like No Kings, the Indivisible group and other liberal groups that organize No Kings, they're not coordinating with Schumer. Schumer has nothing to do with No Kings. Nothing. Zero. And so it's like the Republican messaging is like they're just dragging this out so they can boost attendance at No Kings, which they've also called a Hate America rally. So not only are they saying that Schumer is doing the shutdown to boost No Kings attendance, which is ridiculous. It was already going to be hugely attended. But then they're also claiming repeatedly, like all the Republican House leadership, Johnson, Emmer, Scalise, all of them are repeating this mantra that the people at the No Kings rallies are all Antifa, Marxist,
paid
terrorists that hate America. They're calling it the Hate America rally, which blows me away because after the last No Kings event, the Republicans were all making fun of it, saying this was all a bunch of boomer grandmothers. This is just a bunch of boomer grandmothers.
Surely they want this because, the end game here is for Trump to impose the Insurrection Act so he can cancel the election, right? Just planning ahead for a second, right? So they actually want people to think that there is this mass revolt they can then say, okay, well, that's the insurrection because... wasn't Vance asked about this the other day, about the Insurrection Act, and he kind of accidentally let slip that it's something we're seriously looking at. I mean, this is a real problem
they
for...
They want these rallies to get violent. They want to provoke violence. They're trying to.
Yes.
So you're right. They're trying to sort of hype this up as like willing into existence, like this is going to be violent. This is going to be really bad, kind of hoping that there are incidents of violence, but we've already had 2 of these things attended by many millions of people. There were 0 incidents of violence.
Yeah.
So like, it's kind of like going out on a limb for them here to predict violence when we've already had 2 of these and there hasn't been any.
And the way that the right-wing media cover the No Kings thing is by either not covering it or saying that only 6 people attended and showing like a street corner where there's a few people with signs. And so what this is going to do is it's actually going to work against that tactic, isn't it? Because if they need to show that people are revolting en masse, then they're going to have to show kind of drone shots of 1 million people marching in New York. And that is going to inspire people to recognize that there is opposition to Trump and that Trump is not as popular as he tells us he is.
Look, if there was any Democrat who during the first 2 didn't know about it or were busy or had other things going on, I did on one of them. I didn't go because I had a big event that I wanted to go to instead. And I felt kind of bad, when I drove by. Big protest that was in Bath, Maine, huge protest for a small town. I kind of felt bad that I didn't go. But look, if there was any Democrat like me who kind of had other plans, or they're all off now because wild horses couldn't keep me away from a No Kings this weekend. I'm all in. And I think a lot of people listening to this show who are in the U.S. are too. I think everybody on social media is fired up. The Republicans have done more to fire people up to go to these No Kings rallies this Saturday than any Democrat could have. Thanks a lot, guys.
Yeah. All right, let's have a quick look at Mike Johnson talking about the shutdown.
At the end of this week, it will have been a month since the House has been out. Why are you keeping the House out if you have a lot of other work to do? Are you saying that you can't work on appropriations and other things while the government is shut down? And what do you say to Republicans in your own conference who are critical of this strategy of keeping the House out?
I've heard a criticism from, I think, 3 members on our conference call, and since our conference calls leak and they're always spun. That's the fact. You can poll individual House Republicans, maybe you should, and 98.7% of them will tell you that this is the right thing. Why? It's what you just said is the opposite of what I've said. We are working on appropriations. That work has been done in earnest. The next package of bills is being prepared. Appropriators are talking not just Republicans and Democrats, but across the aisle on that. And we can move all that forward. Right now, the House Republicans, I don't know what the Democrats are doing, but the House Republicans have been very busy. They're doing some of their best work in the district, helping their constituents navigate this crisis that's been created by Chuck Schumer and the Democrats. The Schumer shutdown causes real pain for real people, veterans, the elderly, people who rely upon these services, our rural hospitals that have been struggling. Our members are out helping them to access the rural hospital fund that we created and that the president signed into law on July 4th that no Democrats assisted on. Chuck Schumer wants to take those funds away. They're trying to make sure that the rural hospitals can access them because they know that this effort is underway. And so our members are doing very productive work. We're in constant communication with them, and we are ready to come back and continue the work in our committees and everything on the House floor. We will return to legislative session as soon as the Democrats come to their senses and open the government. That is a necessity so that the work can continue and the members of Congress can do their jobs. And that's what we will do. That's our commitment. It always has been. This has to stop. We're on day 13. This should end tomorrow. The Democrats in the Senate's next opportunity to end this, to change this and vote yes and reopen the government will be tomorrow. And I pray that they will do the right thing. And then we'll all get together and have our partisan disputes and discussions on all the issues that remain on the table for the end of the year. We're doing our work behind the scenes. We're preparing for that moment, and we can't wait for it to happen. So the question is for the Democrats. When will Congress get going again? And I hope they answer it affirmatively. Thanks so much.
Yeah. He's full of it, isn't he?
So, I mean, look, Mike Johnson has had the House in session for 12 days out of the last 84. So 72 days off with pay, 12 days working. Many of those days off were well before the shutdown. Why? Oh, we know one big reason why. He's blocking Epstein. He refuses to swear in the new rep who was elected 3 weeks ago. The Arizona Attorney General is talking about now suing Mike Johnson because he refuses to swear in the new rep because she's the final signer. And once that's signed, you know, we talked about before, it takes like 10 days to get a vote on the floor on that thing. So the clock doesn't start yet until she's sworn in and signs the petition. So I think this is another gross miscalculation by Mike Johnson, is to send his members home. And a couple things he said in there. They're working very hard in their districts. How do we know? Really? Like, they could be in the Bahamas. We don't know where they are. We don't know what they're doing. And the other, helping them navigate helping the rural hospitals get their funds. So what they did is they cut $150 billion from rural hospitals, and then they created a slush fund and they put $50 billion in it. So that's supposed to be the solution, right? Oh, we helped them out. Look, here, the bottom line is this, is that 22 million people are going to see their health insurance premiums skyrocket. The majority of those 22 million are in Republican districts. There have been studies that broke that down, okay? In Republican districts, not Democrats. This is a program that is, the ACA subsidies is a program that is hugely popular with Republican voters. And so this is their problem. So what they're saying is, give up your leverage, agree to our CR, agree to the CR and the budget that's currently in place. And we promise you that we will then sit down with you and negotiate on the ACAs. And Democrats are simply saying, we don't believe you because you've double-crossed us many times in the past. So has the administration. After we make deals, you renege on them. And so we're not going to go along with this until you sit down and negotiate the Affordable Care Act subsidies. And the reason why, besides Epstein, that he sent everybody home and is keeping them home, all the reporting is he was worried that if the members were in D.C., they would get constantly asked questions, they would be talking to Democrats, and side deals would be made, agreements would be made between them. We know people like AOC and others have reached across the aisle and cut deals. And Johnson doesn't want that. Johnson wants to have only his leadership team in D.C., everyone else gone, so that he controls the narrative and he controls what's coming out of the Republican conference. And so, but it's a huge miscalculation because it allows Democrats to say every single day, where are you guys? You won't even show up to work. So I think just their strategy has just been terrible every step of the way. And look, when you're letting Schumer and Jeffries outfox you on messaging, you're not doing a very good job.
Jeffries had a nice moment in the corridor the other day, didn't he, where he was approached by one of the Republican reps and kind of started arguing with him, and it kind of went viral, and Jeffries actually held his own. And I was kind of briefly impressed because, you know, I've been so desperate for these guys to kind of step up. And he even did a press conference yesterday as well, didn't he? So he's kind of trying to kind of cross over, but the problem is the media, they're kind of done with even carrying a lot of his stuff now because he's not that interesting to listen to, and it's a little bit disappointing. I'll just say finally on this point that you're right that the longer the shutdown continues and people go unpaid, it's really the Republicans' decision and Trump's decision not to pay people. You know, in law, there is a requirement for people to be paid. And so that does put the onus and the emphasis on Trump and the MAGA Republicans as the ones who are causing hardship for people, not the Democrats.
And remember what we've said on the show a million times. Who decides elections? Low information voters, people who don't follow social media and the news. And so low information voters aren't following the filibuster and, you know, you need 60 votes and all this. They don't know about all that. All they know is Republicans run everything. They control the government. They control the House, the Senate, the presidency, the Supreme Court, and things are broken right now and they're not working and everybody's fighting and people aren't getting paid, and they're going to hold them responsible. They're not going to get into the weeds with Mike Johnson on the process and on the filibuster rule and why Democrats could reopen the government if they really wanted to. All that, like, it doesn't work for them. And the bottom line is that if their political instincts were a little bit better, which they're failing them right now, they would know that. I mean, and they have to be seeing some of these polls on this stuff. So I do believe that the longer this goes, it benefits Democrats, which Schumer stupidly said. You know, Schumer, in an interview with Punch Bowl, said, this benefits us the longer it goes. I mean, you don't freaking say that in the press. I mean, because that line, one line in a Punch Bowl story, has been the Republicans' messaging this whole week. They've repeated that line a million times. Schumer says the shutdown is better for Democrats politically. Yeah. I mean, you just got to be a little bit smarter when you're talking to the press.
Yeah. Well, he ain't smart, you know. He might be sweet, but he ain't smart. Finally, let's talk about No Kings again, because obviously it's this weekend and it's a huge deal. Republicans are getting very stressed about it, including Mike Johnson, actually. Let's take a look.
A very patient guy, but I have had it with these people. They're playing games with real people's lives. The theory we have right now, they have a Hate America rally that's scheduled for October 18th on the National Mall. It's all the pro-Hamas wing and the Antifa people. They're all coming out. Some of the House Democrats are selling T-shirts for the event, and it's being told to us that they won't be able to reopen the government until after that rally because they can't face their rabid base. I mean, this is serious business, hurting real people. And I'm beyond words. I can't believe they're actually doing this.
Yeah, Mr. Speaker, you're talking about that No Kings rally. Real quickly before we move on to another topic.
Yeah, Mr. Speaker, you mean you're actually talking about American people, the American citizens that oppose the overarching authoritarian takeover of government? Because this is, you know, it might be semantics to him, but the reality is that there are more of us than there are of them. It only takes 3.5% of a population to overthrow a government. And we're looking at potentially tens of millions of people around the country who are going to step up for this No Kings protest. Sean Duffy was asked a similar question on Fox. Let's have a quick look at him.
The No Kings protest, Maria, really frustrating. I mean, this is part of Antifa, paid protesters. It begs the question, who's funding it? But
Yeah. No one's funding it, babes. It's the people. It's the very American citizens who oppose this regime.
I mean, there's a website. I mean, there's some organization. I got an email from them today, you know, like just explaining like, hey, you know, bring your own signs, be creative, be peaceful, be polite.
Bring sandwiches.
You know, bring sandwiches, post things on social media afterwards. Yeah, I mean, there's some organization, but I mean, you know, there's nobody like handing out the horror. They're handing out T-shirts. I didn't get any T-shirt. I didn't get any check from Soros. I mean, look, I mean, this is just so dumb. How can they say that? I mean, this isn't like some hardcore, you know, people breaking in on Kamala's speech, yelling at her about Gaza group. You know, that's not what this is. This is large. I mean, you know, I thought, you know, when the Republicans were making fun of the first one and said it was all, you know, boomer grandmothers, I thought I kind of chuckled because, you know, that was a lot of No Kings, the first one, but that has changed. I mean, it's not just like old white people, you know, it's everybody. It's a big cross.
Well, it's everybody, because if you kidnap people in the street, you are not setting a good precedent for peace, are you? If you have a secret police force that is kidnapping people, including people's neighbors and relatives, then that is, if you know, you can't do that stuff and not expect pushback. And what they fail to realize is that Antifa is the majority of America. It might not have a membership scheme. It might not have a headquarters. It might be completely decentralized. It is the majority of Americans. Trump is not the majority. And this is something that they're going to learn over the coming weeks as these protests continue.
It's the majority of Americans saying we don't like what is happening with our government right now. We don't like what is going on. We don't like a million things that are happening. And, until the next election, this is the only thing that we can do, is take to the streets and in a peaceful way. So to say that those millions of people who feel that way and are willing to take their time out of a Saturday to do this they hate America? No. They love America. They love the American ideals. This is what America's all about. This is literally why the founders made free speech and assembly their very first part of the Bill of Rights. It's the first thing.
You do this because you love America, not despite it. Tom Emmer also went on Fox Business and had something to say about it too.
These guys are playing to the most radical, small, and violent base in the country. You'll see them on Saturday on the Mall. They just do not love this country, and these guys are afraid of them. Chuck Schumer et al. are afraid of them.
Yeah, he's afraid of him. Republican Congress people are afraid of him because they are going to get voted out. They're going to be humiliated. They're going to be exposed as cowards, amongst other things. But as you say, if the vote is in question, and I genuinely think that he will be seeking to bring about the Insurrection Act. I think that Trump is all out now. This is not a kind of secret dictatorship. We're in the midst of a full-on dictatorship that looks like it's spilling out beyond the borders of America. He wants to be king of the world. And if you watch the Egypt press conference that he did yesterday, you'll agree. I mean, that was the role that he has now given himself. And so I don't think that they're going to tolerate peaceful protest or otherwise. I think they're gonna send in the tanks, whatever happens, so they can create skirmishes and create an excuse to, claim that this whole thing is a rebellion and must be quashed with the Insurrection Act.
Yeah. So all we can do is pray that they go the same way the first two went, which is very peaceful, very patriotic, great signs, very creative. And intelligent people, expressing themselves, because they're going to be looking for any little incident or act of violence to justify trying to label this as some kind of and what Fox is going to do. If there's 2 or 3 little dust-ups with police or something, they're going to be playing them 24/7 on a loop.
That's right.
But they didn't have
so the lesson is right. But I think people know now, don't rise to it. Don't get in the way. Don't allow yourself to be used as kind of as collateral for the MAGA Republicans to kind of turn this into something that it isn't. This is peaceful opposition to an authoritarian regime. And at the moment, that is still entirely legal. Okay, we have to finish, but I'm grateful for the chat as ever. Don't forget to download the audio podcast that drops later tonight. You can rewind, watch again, share the show, comment down below, check out our sponsors down there as well, and we'll come back next Wednesday with another Uncovered. Thank you, Ron.
All right, we'll see you next week.